Hey, welcome to episode 112 of Decentralized Revolution. It's the Mises Caucus podcast. I'm Aaron Harris. I'm your host. Brandi is with us again, too. She's the best part of this podcast so far. The few weeks we've done it, I'm really happy we have a fresh voice and not just me talking all the time. We do have a guest that we had on maybe a year or so ago. So it's good to have you back, Jeremy. How's it going?
It's great to be here. I just had a great time at Porcfest. Kind of the largest running, biggest libertarian gathering in the world. And even that doesn't describe it. I don't know how to describe Porcfest succinctly. Brandi could probably tell you. What number Porcfest was that for you, Brandi?
That was my first one. I tried to go last year, but my Airbnb fell through, but it was amazing. I loved it. And in my opinion, I think the best part is being around a bunch of libertarians in person and like touching grass with them and not just seeing people like via internet. Like I think that that's amazing because I think that we just get so lost in the sauce like on the internet, and we really need to like have more in person discussions. And even if we might disagree on some details, like that doesn't matter, we're all still pursuing liberty. And
Totally.
it was amazing.
Totally.
It was
What do you
amazing.
think of like Burning Man, but with rabid capitalism? What do you
Yeah,
think? Is that like
yes.
an accurate description?
Yes. Yeah, and
Yeah.
less dust.
And more guns, yeah, and way more guns. But it's like, yeah, it's like a parade all the time. It's like, people are in outfits. People bring stuff to show off. It's a lot. A lot of events are about the schedule, and there is that, and there are some big things, and we'll go through them. We'll talk about some of the big things that happen there. But a lot of it, it's exactly what you're saying. This chance to hang out in a casual way, with all of these people, and with everyone, including like basically everyone speaking. Pretty much everyone speaking is hanging out and doing casual kinds of things. Anyone can put anything on the schedule. Like my 5-year-old did old school. It was blacksmithing for kids, and he was so excited about it. For 2 hours, he was in full like head to toe clothing, using like I don't even know the names of all the blacksmithing tools, but they were or anything about blacksmithing. But there were some very hot pieces of metal involved, and I'm sure that is not the kind of lesson or class that is available, publicly and generally. So it's pretty cool all the things that happen there.
I'm glad to see that child labor was indeed part of
Oh,
Portfest.
child labor was everywhere. It's great.
As libertarians, we hardly endorse that. I've been working since I was 9 with the paper route, so I know I'm firmly for kids working. And if if you talk to kids who like are actually in school and stuff like that these days, like so much of their problems would be solved if they were not in school but had a job. I'll just say that right now. If they could do something that they really wanted to do instead of sit at a desk for 8 hours a day and take orders. But so that's cool. So there was a lot of things. So I have never been to Porcfest. I've kind of planned on it a couple times. It's always fallen through. The last 2 or 3 years, it's like I got other stuff going on. And so hopefully next year I'll be able to make it up there. But as someone who just kind of following it from afar, I mean, the RFK thing was one thing that people were talking about, which I'm sure we'll get to. But the thing I'm curious about was something we talked about on the show a couple weeks ago with Clint Russell, I think, was your debate with Matt Kibbe, Jeremy. I love your style and your approach to things. And so probably half the people listening to this know what I'm talking about, but just tell us what the debate was, who proposed it, and how it went.
So the strict claim on the debate resolution was that it is harder to convert a non-libertarian to libertarianism than a non-homosexual to homosexuality. I had the affirmative, and I did win the debate, but with about a plus 15-ish% persuasion movement. Matt was a very fair debate opponent. And a very respectable debate opponent. One of the things, I'm actually a bit of a debate skeptic, although which is funny to say. I'm belittling my own victory so quickly.
I wanted a recount.
Matt did still have a slim majority on his side at the end of the debate. More importantly here, the topic for me is like, honestly, I actually don't care about that narrow claim. Because clearly, I'm not making the claim that like homosexuality is like fake. Like, lots of people are born this way. Clearly, clearly, some people are also born, this way. And so, clearly, we can persuade some people to the ideas of libertarianism, but not all. And we can similarly, some people have the ability to. There's a range with which you're in. And it's people have genuinely different inclinations to preferences, and I don't know if we want to like go through to like rehash the debate, but I don't think that's probably.
I'll debate you right now, Jeremy. Let's go. Let's go.
But basically, definitely watch the video when it comes out on the Soho forum, or literally just spend some time Googling this stuff. I'm honestly not looking to persuade you. If you go and look this stuff up for yourself, you will persuade yourself. So just look these things up, read about twin studies, Google things like, genetic inclination to political behavior, and assuming you can actually look at scientific studies and you don't want a Joe Rogan podcast, to tell you, because right. Isn't that the real thing? We're supposed to be doing it that way. Because that's also the problem is, I can cite things verbally. There's a gentleman who I think is quite dumb named RFK who likes to do this. He likes to cite these things verbally. But then what happens? How do you evaluate them? People can't evaluate your like verbal scientific claims in real time. Like that's like complicated work. So if you're going to, and so basically I beat Matt, but part of the way I beat Matt is I made these scientific references to these scientific claims. And of course, I of course believe that my scientific claims are robust and solid and well-founded, but it's a kind of thing. It's a nuanced kind of thing, and so it requires a real detailed back and forth. It's something maybe that's a meta comment about some of the stuff that's going on with these debate topics.
Well, basically, what we're all of us who are in the libertarian movement, and I think it would apply to everybody, that we all want to see the world we live in become more libertarian, and the question is, how do you do that? And I totally agree with you, Jeremy. Like there are some, like one thing that I've always found about libertarians, and as someone who's been one for about 30 years, like I've seen that most of us are very obsessed with being right, in the sense that we want our views to be consistent. That's why we argue about things like abortion or immigration or stuff like that, other people might not see the nuance in that, but we really want to try to, make sure things line up with our sense of justice, that we want people to not have to do things against their will. And we're very obsessed with being ideologically consistent about that. And that is, the number of people who are like that is very, very, very small. Most people are willing to live with all kinds of contradictions in life. And, I think they're the normal ones, right? They're not obsessed with all these things that we are. And so sometimes that I think we are kind of clueless in how we get from point A to point B. We see, like, I think we're right. Like liberty is better, and we want to convince people of that. And because we allowed ourselves to be convinced through arguments, like I think I've always been predisposed toward libertarianism, but my specific views on that have changed and refined a lot over the years, but it was always kind of there. But like for someone who is a normal person, to get them even interested in this stuff, I don't know how you do it. So like I'm definitely going to watch the debate, but like that kind of that gets us back to the question of like, well, then what are we doing here if we can't convince?
I believe we can. So I believe we can. In my opinion, I was a legit like communist. Like but to be fair, I always had like this anti-authoritarian kind of vibe, even then. Like I know that sounds contradictory, but it was true. Like I was very like anti-war, and pretty anti-state, though I think that there was like in my mind that there could be a better state. I think back then was something that I kind of believed, but truthfully, I think that we can do this with art and culture and actually just making liberty cool again. And actually, I think that maybe a lot of older people, sure, their opinions might be solidified. It'll be hard to change their mind. But I think with younger generations, with people that are still figuring out their views, people that aren't sure, I think that there's way more opportunity there, and I think it's possible. And I definitely think that it's easier to convince a libertarian to convince someone to be a libertarian than to convince them to have sex with a dude to have sex with a dude. You know.
Well, my views are certainly more sympathetic to Aaron's, although my claim is also not that persuasion does happen. It does happen, absolutely, and it does also frequently happen in ways that people like Aaron, may, and I'm not trying to put you in a box, Aaron. Actually, I shouldn't even be judging you this strongly, but might not appeal to someone, someone like you. Just taking a guess. Someone like me as well, by the way. I'm not trying to differentiate in that way. So, but look, I gave it. My view, I actually gave a great talk at Porcfest on Saturday morning called "Doing What Must Be Done." That was kind of using Hoppe's "What Must Be Done" as a springboard, and maybe trying to update it a bit, but not regurgitate it, and just kind of ask this question. And so for anyone who's interested in my view, I encourage you to check out that talk. But it's essentially try to return to any place where you can return a meritocratic and private property order. Hoppe would say at the smallest scale possible. I think for pragmatic reasons, that is a state level. I think it's just not possible to do it at the municipal level. But that is what you need to do. You need to create a libertarian moral order, a private property order, on which all kinds of other things, of course, can potentially be built. But you need to have that, and you need to have it with a set of properties that it can maintain itself with, right? Because we've also seen at least somewhat or fairly libertarian orders collapse under the weight of democracy or various things. So I am a cynic, but I also think that we're doing the most rational thing that you could possibly do up here in New Hampshire. I think that it's working, and I think that it's also a fun time, as anyone who attended Porcfest would probably attest to. And so it's interesting. I was rereading all this old libertarian stuff, and I guess I can call libertarian stuff from the 70s old now. Is that old enough? Does it?
Yeah. This is before I was born. It's old to me.
Older than that. But I reread Rothbard's Egalitarianism as a Revolt Against Nature, which I read at the LP tent as a fundraising activity. By the way, that tent up there was great with the LP setup, as well as the LPNH setup and the Free State base setup. There's a bunch of people there all the time. I know the LP sold several lifetime memberships. LPNH sold memberships. And just all kinds of positive brand exposure, positive experiences. So, but yeah, this idea, it's the same stuff. This is what kept going through my head as I was like, you're reading this stuff from the 1970s, and it's like we're in the same place. It's the same problems motivated by the same fundamental human impulses, right? Like nothing has changed in 50 years if you reread Egalitarianism as a Revolt Against Nature. It's like you have to replace a couple of the words, but it's incredible. I mean, people really liked it. People were people really enjoyed it. So it's funny because I think some people heard me reading it, wandering by, thinking that I had written this talk, and I'd be like, "That's a really good talk." I was like, "Yeah, I was reading a book."
I was just mad that you weren't in drag. I was very upset. I had high hopes. He didn't show up in drag, and I was like, "Fuck this."
I have no problem with it. Sometimes people think I'm a culturally conservative guy. I'm not. I'm a far right progressive. And I'm so progressive that I think conservatives are people that also deserve to have their social preferences obeyed. Which in a private property order means conservatives can do all kinds of stuff that, to me, as a progressive, in the real meaning of that word, of course, not in all the associated stuff that comes with it today, that me as a progressive imperfectly or don't approve, would not want my place to be run that way. I don't, I'm not interested in having a strong, moral or religious order, which a lot of people want this though. And this is what libertarians have to cope with. Yeah. What if around the planet, there are 4 billion people with a psychology that strongly desires a strong man that strongly enforces moral values within an authoritarian hierarchical way. and this is they're psychologically wired to like and be attracted to whoever they perceive as the most dominant ape in the room, regardless of how correct he is about literally anything. And you could put the evidence in their face. It could be as incontrovertible and it just wouldn't matter because their psychology is different than yours. And I'm not going to cling to that 4 billion number, but what if, where do you go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I also think it comes down to like people having to be able to understand that your values aren't going to be the same as everyone else. And I think that that's what becomes a problem is like, okay, they're the social, like more socially conservative people that want that and that's fine. And then there's going to be like the more socially progressive or socially liberal people and they're going to have what they want and that's fine. And it's like people should just be able to do what they want regardless. The problem is that some people feel like only their side is the libertarian side, it seems like, is what I've noticed. It's like, oh, well, I've noticed that some people will kind of act like, no, well, the social conservative values are the right values, so these are the values that should be libertarian. And then it's kind of loses me a little bit. I'm like, I don't know. I think, yeah.
But yeah, and that's another whole nother axis is which how many people have the ability to actually apply a rule or a principle consistently. A ton of people. Another psychological concept that I think we don't have enough self-awareness of is like this whole concept of self-deceiving and how it's exactly what you were saying, Aaron, about these people's their comfortableness in being inconsistent. It's not actually that. It's not, or it kind of is. But I think that what's happening is that it's that some people are just very comfortable or have a very high level of the factor of sort of like self-deceiving, and I really like Robin Hanson's work here, as well as a guy named Trivers, we vary a ton, in this, and I guess sort of like maybe Dunning-Kruger is kind of a popular conception of the idea of self-deception, and so if you're striving to really build this consistent framework, you tend to be low in self-deception, where not universally, but whereas a lot of these people I believe something else 2 years, it doesn't matter, or I believe this way in situation I believe this way. It's like, but in other words, it's like it doesn't even exist in their own heads.
Do you think the issue has to do with like people unable to live within the concept of like nuance? Like it seems like that seems to be a problem, is a lack of nuance, which might make it feel like it's a contradiction, but it's not. It's just like not a black or white situation. It's just more of a spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't think we're ever going to get there on peace, love, and understanding. I like the idea of getting there via peace, love, and understanding, but I think that like, if you don't have there's something beyond that, especially with a philosophy like ours, that it is very easy if it is true that our sort of live and let live philosophy or moral inclinations and this kind of thing isn't shared by others, then it will be very easy for those people to kind of morally justify aggression, against the libertarian entity or libertarian order.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of, also going back to a little bit of what I was saying as far as convincing people, like most people don't think about these things that deeply, and I think they tend to affiliate with Team Red or Team Blue based on who they feel sort of culturally comfortable with, or whatever. So like, certain people today who have certain beliefs, you put them in the same person in a different family, in a different decade, in a different state in America, they would be just as easily Republican as they would be Democrat, just because they feel comfortable in a particular sort of cultural, it's part of their identity. So I think what kind of Brandi was talking about is trying to make things cool again is somehow to get enough people willing to identify as libertarians, even though like, you know,
Right.
we're never.
It's
gonna
like what
get- we're not-
communism
Look,
did,
all right,
like
I'm
Hollywood did with communism. Do you know what I mean?
I'm gonna make a
Like-
I'm gonna make a bold a bold claim. I'm not sure if I believe it, but we'll have some fun. The sort of the fundamental root of all of this, all of the rot in the world, all of the reason that we stagnate, that there is no space for libertarianism, that there is no private property order anywhere on earth, is the human impulse for egalitarianism. And that this sort of human impulse of egalitarianism, it's just swallowed the whole world. It swallowed the whole world. And people, it's just an impulse of so many people to chop someone else down if they are standing too tall. It's why people have and I'm not going to love the people I'm about to name, but in terms of the reason that other people don't like them, Elon Musk, right? Why did so many people loathe that guy? This guy, even environmentalists, he did so much for, because he stands tall, and people don't like people who stand tall. Why did the submarine guy, who right, the submarine, the OceanGate thing, right? It's the same kind of idea. Like, people aren't mad. I mean, again, he did all kinds of like crazy stuff, but why is there? Because he was a dreamer. He tried to he tried to achieve things. He tried to do things. He tried to build things. And so there's this leveling impulse that's just so strong in a lot of people, and I think it's at the bottom of it, that part of our psychology.
Well, and I think it comes from so if you look at you read like this guy Oppenheimer wrote a book called The State, and other people who have looked at kind of the origins of the state I think it's basically when people figured out agriculture, and when we went from being hunter-gatherers who like had to, small bands of 100 people or so doing this thing and moving around all the time. Okay, then we had agriculture, and so we're sitting in one place, creating wealth in a big pile that can be taken away once or twice a year. And so what happened was the people who were strong and who could tame horses basically figured out, I don't have to work. I just go around and rob all the people who are farming. And so that's the genesis of the state is the political means.
Yeah, but the egalitarian impulse existed before that.
No, I'm getting to something here.
Sorry.
It's like those people who figured out, okay, I'm going to be the guy who is the state and to do all this. And I'm still a minority. If all the peasants and their pitchforks came after, the 1% of people with the horses and all that, they would, we couldn't withstand that. So what do we have to do? We have to tap into envy, which has been, since man was created. Envy has always been there. So it's the people who run the state have figured out either it's fear, envy, whatever. And in our modern age, the last 200 years, the egalitarianism taps into that envy. And so people, whether it's the British monarchy 200 years ago or modern liberal democracies now, that's just like the easiest with mass communication and stuff like that. It's the envy is the easiest of those, flaws in human character to exploit. And so people think, the whole thing about democracy is, I have a say in what's going on, and these guys are going to make sure nobody gets too tall out of the pack. And, I think so we're agreeing the same thing. Is that I'm saying that the people who really run things know how to exploit that. And in our lifetimes and for the last couple hundred years, it's been egalitarianism. So I completely agree with that.
So we need to turn it into, I was going to say, we just need to turn it into aspiration, like being like, we can be, because I think that's the problem. Like, yeah, you hate all the like greedy capitalists because they have more than you and they're succeeding more than you and you're envious. But can't that be transferred into like aspiration and being like, well, you could be that? Like, capitalism is a free market. What's amazing about it, especially when it's unregulated, is that it's possible for anyone to be that. And yeah, maybe there'll always be someone higher than you, but you can aspire to that and get closer to that, right? Like, just changing that narrative. No, Jeremy's so fucking black-pilled.
No, it's not. And by the way, I'm not black-pilled in the slightest. I'm clear-pilled. Okay. Like, I'm not someone who is like a doomer. I'm working very hard because I'm an optimist. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
I'm wired to be an optimist, by the way. I can't not be optimistic. It's it's a big challenge for me, if anything. Like I have very low neuroticism. I was like, it'll work out, like everything's gonna be fine. No, the egalitarian impulse existed way before the state. The egalitarian impulse is there in hunter-gatherer tribes, where you have gossip networks to enforce that things are kind of being kept fair. When there are differing abilities, as of course there would be even then. And I think it's actually, if anything, ironically, I guess in some ways you have more of it. If you think about it that way, do you have more of it than ever? But no, you probably don't. I don't know. I guess because the era in which people were really able to do things at the scale that they can today, has only kind of coexisted with government. I think that's mostly coincidental because we had to go through a lot of technological development to be able to get through things that you can do them at the scale today. I just think you need something in which, because people will just be able to self-justify all kinds of things, in the same way they go through the same justifications to make the kinds of, what would I think to a logical person, you would even look at them and say, well, you're contradicting yourself. You purport to care about the environment. This is where libertarian, this is the key to all that. You purport to care about the environment, but you don't actually care about these, like the design of this market system that would fix the problem, right? You purport to care about the poor, but you want to raise the minimum wage, and you're not even interested in a transfer payment, right? And of course, I think those are terrible policies. But the point is, like, explain this contradictoriness, and that's the explanation I come back to. But we could bounce over to like more Porcfest stuff or Libertarian Party stuff. I could do this topic all day, because I come at politics like a physicist, and so I'm like, I want to understand, from the atom. So I spend as much time thinking about like psychology and cognitive science and how our brains work and how, because that's upstream of everything else.
Me too. So where I want to kind of go from this, and then maybe circle back around to Porcfest, is like the whole point of the Free State Project to me seems to be, hey, we're not going to convince people in a mass way, so let's just try to separate those of us who are libertarian, put us all at a critical mass of people in a certain spot, and hopefully, people will just leave us alone. Like, it's, in other words, not trying to persuade, but it's trying to carve out one little small space, and whatever happens in the rest of the world is what's going to happen. But if we all get together and try it in one place, we might at least have it for ourselves for some period of time. Is that right? Am I selling that the right way?
Yes, absolutely right. Recognize that but that there are enough of us out there, and by concentrating ourselves. And here's a way to tie it all together, I think, with that and some of this other stuff, which is that, like, in the hunter-gatherer, there was still that egalitarian impulse in the hunter-gatherer land, but you are. It's not a democratic system either, right?
Yeah,
so
there's no state there, and there's no democracy. It's the guy who's in the stronger people who are in charge are still kind of in charge. It's not gonna envy is not gonna dislodge that. The way envy works differently with the state, and especially the modern state, than it would in a hunter-gatherer society. Yeah.
So you get you get a sort of natural elite. Like, most likely it is the kinds of people who end up in charge of that entity, right? And that's what you also see in free markets where they exist, right? It tends to be that the more capable people win. Under democracy, and this hit on something that this ties back to something that you were saying, it's you have this sort of selection mechanism for sociopathy, narcissism, because democracy they're sort of these fiat elites. They're not the natural elites, and so you get a different output of what you get. And my talk on Saturday, which is definitely the one that I think it's the one that I'm the most excited about, and that I'm trying to refine my own ideas, of course, because we're trying to do something new here. But this idea that, because we are building up these kinds of parallel infrastructures, not just for ourselves, but fixing problems in our neighborhood, fixing problems in our communities. We're becoming leaders in our communities. And that's where the real persuasion happens, by becoming leaders in our communities, by being people that look up to. So when we say things that they would have regarded as crazy otherwise, they already know that, we're these respectable people, or they have these other things to sort of counterbalance that in their own, in their own heads. And by doing this, this is a key part of kind of how we do what we need, how we do what must be done.
Yeah. So what else happened? I want to go. You already mentioned his name. So you had a little throwaway comment about RFK Jr. earlier in the show, and I know that he was there, and I'm sort of intrigued by him. I'm under no illusions as to think he's any type of anything other than sort of a boomer lib, whatever. Like I like he gave the speech about war here pretty recently that I thought was very good. At the bottom of it, like I think he is still very blue-pilled. I mean, for someone who's, the CIA murdered his dad and his uncle, to be that blue-pilled is still pretty amazing to me. But so what was that very much of a big deal? I mean, I thought it was odd that he was going to come there, but like, did he bring a lot of people who weren't libertarians? Like, how did that whole thing shake out?
Well, for the organization and the movement itself, I think it was a huge win. We're getting pictures. Our branding is right behind these pictures and these videos of him. They're getting millions of views around the internet. So it's another level for our own visibility and our own reach. And these things matter, even if it's not libertarian seeing them, because it reflects, how big we are. Any awareness is good. We're getting all that. The Democrats here completely crapped themselves over the fact that this was happening. Definitely one of the funnier social media moments for me over the last couple of months was that happening. I mean, they just wrote the most seething letter about how he's visiting these extremists who are trying to destroy the state. And we've definitely become their number one enemy, their number one, sort of bogeyman. It's is us.
Did any of them protest Porcfest? Do you guys get pro?
No, we did not. I mean, I'm this may be unpopular among Mises Caucus people. I'm pretty, but I don't care. I mean, I've been in fact enjoying myself on Twitter the last couple of days over this.
Really, have you?
Because I'm an RFK hater. I mean, I think he's just completely loony, man. I mean, he has bad epistemology, and so when I see someone with bad epistemology, and obviously people are different on this, I put how I think someone is as a thinker, are they completely, in terms of whether I would trust them. Now, whether I would want someone negotiating for me, right? Like, I have no respect for Trump as a thinker. I have no respect for Trump on politics. So how do you view? But so I think they're loony. These people are loony. Trump and RFK are, they're appealing to the same sort of I'm not saying everyone who likes these people is either the things we're about to say, but it's like the low IQ and borderline schizophrenic crowd. And you can be schizo without being clinically schizo. I just mean the more that way, because everything's a normal distribution. And it's like, I just think he's a dumb human being. But if he throws wrenches in the race and all this stuff, I'm cool with it from this view. But in terms of genuinely liking him, I think people who genuinely like him are kind of crazy. But
he's I think Jeremy's an intellectual elitist.
Absolutely. 100%.
Hey, I don't even love RFK. I'm actually always the one that's always just I think everyone's putting their eggs in this basket a little too fast. And I was upset that I couldn't get in because I had some questions. I had a list of questions I wanted to ask him, because I feel like it seems like RFK, I mean, it's rhetoric, and sure, it sounds nice, but I want to ask him some questions and see if he dances around answering them, because what I've noticed in a lot of videos when people ask him questions, it seems like he's dancing around it. And that's the politician way, when you're just not giving a straight answer.
What's the one thing you would ask him?
I want to ask him how he feels about red flag laws. I want to ask him how a carbon tax. I just want to ask him these very straightforward questions to get him to respond to them, because it seems like that's not happening.
Well, I think what Jeremy said, I think, is his utility is the monkey wrench in things, and to just screw things up for the Democrats and have them have to at least talk about these issues. The fact that he's talking about war.
You
and
think
peace
he's
and
going to
stuff
steal
like this.
Biden voters? I think he would be more likely to steal Republican voters, and also I'm having a bunch of people tell me that they're switching their registration to Democrat just so they can vote in the primary.
Yeah,
And
it's all the same people who like Trump. The people who like Trump are the same exact psychology of the people who like RFK. It's
I knew
very
people that
overlapping.
were
It's a
Ron
bit.
people.
You get some lefty hippie types that like RFK that wouldn't have been MAGA supporters, and you get some MAGA supporters who definitely don't cross it. But it's a lot of the same. It's a lot of the same psychological clash.
Well, I think that it's kind of that baby boomer, like, I want politics to be like they told me it was, and it's like the people who think Forrest Gump is a good movie are like the people who are RFK and Trump. It's like this storybook version of America that, oh, we have this, a Kennedy who's going to tell the truth and be virtuous. It's like I agree with Jeremy on that. There's some overlap in that, but I think the overlap is people who buy that American exceptionalism mythology. And if we just all get together and put our minds to it, we can make this a great country again. It's the same. The MAGA. It's MAGA from the left.
And then that also makes me wonder if it's a psyop, because a part of me, or that if he's controlled opposition, because a part of me still believes Trump was. So
I saw someone. Who was this? I think it's Anarchy in Black. But if I miscredited the wrong person, talking about how that it's got to be like the DeSantis supporters who are the most interested in astroturfing and boosting the RFK campaign. And that's like people that make sense for the never Trump Republicans to be boosting RFK, or not. I guess never Trump's kind of dead. People who would prefer anyone to him. Right. That they make sense for them to signal boost RFK to peel those people off of the Republican primary and into the Democratic one.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. And I think that DeSantis is straight up swamp creature. Like I think that the string pullers on that side of things are like, oh, our base hates the woke thing. Let's create an anti-woke person who will do literally every other single thing that we want him to do. And so I think that I think DeSantis is. I think this is their long game. I think they're trying to ensure that DeSantis wins in 5 years rather than next year.
Yeah.
Ties into my conspiracy. I think DeSantis will. So I think DeSantis will win if he wins the primary. This is everyone. You can quote me on it.
How's he going to win the primary?
I think yeah. The problem is he has no chance to win the primary.
You don't think?
Very low right now.
Even with RFK and everything, and if he peels enough away, and you don't think so? I don't know.
I would bet against, but no, maybe it's not. They have to figure out something different. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, this is this part of the Republican base that just stays with Trump no matter what. I mean, there's absolutely nuts. Every single one of them. If you ever meet, like, they're just all people who are just nutty people. I'm surprised they're able to make it through modern society.
But they're not nutty though. That's the thing, is like they have been told for the last 50 years, a certain segment of American society has been told by the media, by the academia, by everybody that they're despicable, horrible, backward human beings, and one person comes along and is willing to stick up for them, even though this person shares none of their values, none of the things they say that they're for, who's basically been willing to stand up for them in the way that he does. And basically the people who support Trump are just giving a middle finger to the establishment.
Sure, but at this point, that makes no sense. Like I think that's a perfectly plausible narrative. At this point, I can no longer say that explains the whole thing.
Of course it explains everything, because like it just keeps reinforcing itself. It's like, okay, I voted for this guy because he's the only one who stuck up for me, and now you're telling me that I'm even worse because I'm doing this, and you're trying to arrest him, and you're trying to turn January 6th into something, and you're bring all these books. Like it's
right, but right, sure, okay. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Fool me the 3 millionth time. You're just a retard. Like
But
if
no
you
one
talk
else-
to any, but they're all retarded people. They're all low IQ, dumb people. I can't point to us other than the ones who do it cynically, right? Like there's this wing of the right wing these right wing populists who do it kind of cynically. You'll
But
find
they
plenty
have-
of people who like to maintain these collections of these incredibly dumb human beings. But like they're all dumb. Anyone who's a hardcore MAGA guy at this point.
It's also
dumb.
possession of
They-
like
they
the
have
cult
no-
of personality. Like people just, I'm seeing it with RFK now already. Like
I have
people
no problem liking Trump's personality. I like Trump's personality. I voted for Trump even. Okay, so I'm not saying I can't understand the appeal to Trump. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm saying now. That's all.
But you don't think that people once they like start to identify, I think it comes down to is like when you start to identify with something like that, you start to identify with MAGA, you start to post it everywhere, and like then it's hard for you to say never mind. I think it's very hard for people to leave something. It's like leaving a cult, to be honest. It's very hard for you once you put your identity into something to admit like, okay, maybe I was wrong, or maybe this is not the way, and change it. So instead, everyone doubles down and continues on.
But the people who still support Trump, it's of anyone else they could identify with politically. Everyone else, Trump has managed to convince them that he cares about them and doesn't think they're idiots. Literally everyone else keeps telling these people they're idiots and they're evil. So it makes more sense now because of what they've done, they're even more of a social pariah to the elites. And so they have nowhere else to go, and they will go down on that ship because no one else is going to pick up that banner. Like it's not going anywhere. Like, I don't know if Trump could actually win again. I don't think they will let that happen, just like they didn't let it happen last time.
Right. Look, I'm not saying that I don't get that. And I think actually psychologically the continued support is most likely closer to, I think it's Brandi, you said that like that they're so psychologically committed they can't unwind the commitment. But like that, it's like at a certain point you have, if you have been told something for a long time and you've never checked, like, hey, did he actually give me any of the things he promised me? Like, did he do any of these things?
But at least he doesn't hate my guts. That's all it is. That's all it is they don't think that.
But how can you believe he doesn't hate your guts? How do you not start to believe that he's just lying to you? That's what I'm saying. Do you just have zero ability to detect sociopath? Like, that's what I'm saying. They just have no. Okay, what? What word do we want to use for this? Someone who can't tell if someone has lied to them for 10 years. That sounds to me like something like a dumb person. I mean, I just like. So
I'll grant you that, but at least again, the fact that he goes through the motions for them, like, is enough, I think. But yeah, I think we've kind of beat that into the ground. But
so I wasn't trying to get aggressive with you. I was just trying to have some fun with it. All right, I wasn't.
No, I like it. I like it. I'm just saying
I treat this as like doing bits a little bit. Like I'm just going to go on a bit of a rant or something.
No, but to me, that Trump's whole thing has been an 8-year-long bit at this point, right? Like he hits a big, huge troll, and he's just going to keep up with it. And he knows that by saying, "Hey, I'm sticking up for this 35% of the country that knows that the elites hate their guts," like. If any other Republican or Democrat, and maybe that's what I don't know if that's what RFK is tapping into a little bit too, is like he is kind of selling that thing as, oh, remember America where we didn't pretend that we didn't actually hate each other's guts all the time, right?
It's tapping into emotions, not reason. It's tapping instead of like the logic and like the intellectual part of people's brains. It's tapping into the emotional part. And I mean, I think that there's an aspect of that is important for a politician to do. But I mean, you need to be able to logically think about what they're saying as well. I do see this a lot with RFK. Like, I do think that he is like getting this emotional reaction and buzz within people, which, I mean, Ron Paul did it too. But Ron Paul actually had the ideas to back up that.
Right. And the people who could understand ideas stuck with Ron Paul, and all the people who couldn't understand the ideas drifted away to the next person who could resonate with them emotionally. Right. So the persuasion, you get the sort of a little, that little remnants of the people who can understand the ideas. And by the way, I would credit everyone with that. Literally every LP candidate brings in at least some number of people that do genuinely understand the ideas, even the worst among the candidates. Right. And that is part of the benefit of running those races. Because I know I'm the anti-persuasion guy a little bit, but part of the big thing is there are lots of people out there who believe in them and haven't heard of them. Like, that's completely still true. There are lots of people, and so if there's something that I'm a big believer in, it is like, yes, the more that you can spread it, the more that you can create like get that exposure and let people know that this is something that you can be, or that there's a word for it, or these kinds of things.
Yeah, it's to activate the people who already are libertarians, and so that either to wake them up or convince them to get involved or something like that is I think that that's the whole strategy as to why you don't run somebody like Gary Johnson or Bob Barr or whomever, that you want to have Harry Brown or Ron Paul, who's going to stick to that unalloyed 100% pure libertarian message, because the people who are that way already, they're gonna smell a fake and like, well, I don't want to be a part of that movement, but I will be. The people who are contrarian already and believe in liberty, the only way you're going to activate them is by staying true to principle.
Well, but I do think that there's an aspect of people not being able to see nuance here, because there's certain people who I would say, like, for example, I would love if Justin Amash ran for president, and a lot of people are like, well, I might not, like, he's too milquetoast or whatever. And like, in my opinion, I'm like, how is he worse than RFK? Like, or how is he worse than any of those other candidates? But people, like, libertarians will have a hard time like seeing nuance around ideas because they get so like purist on certain things. Because I even think Justin Amash personally is very libertarian. Like, I don't really see much.
He's also he's like anti-charisma, right? Like, he's just like the
that's
most boring
issue, but
like person I've ever.
Well, that's how we get people like RFK and Trump. If we just get the charisma, no fucking ideas. Like, we need the ideas and the charisma, right? Like,
well, but it's funny though that like guys like Ron Paul and Harry Brown, they were kind of like, to me, they have what's called anti-charisma, right? Like, the fact that Ron Paul was just Ron Paul. Hey, I'm this country doctor who understands economics and has a moral backbone, and just like he just was that guy, and he went out there and did that thing and wasn't trying to be charismatic. That's charismatic. It's the fact that Justin Amash is is very on the one hand, on the other hand, let's be civil society this and work together that. Like that puts you to sleep no matter what his sort of message is. You need somebody who is not either who's just going to be himself, right? And I don't get that from Justin Amash. I get it's like, well, how am I going to be perceived if I say this? Is the vibe I get from him.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between someone who shares libertarian impulses, which Amash clearly does, by the way. I wouldn't dispute that for a second. Who shares libertarian impulses and is a sort of pragmatic operator, versus someone who can sort of like genuinely move or pull people to new positions. Like, if you look at Amash, he was running as a Republican the entire time, right? And so the entire time he's competing for that like 5 to 10% of the like undecided middle, and these people also tend to be not that sophisticated, right? And so he's just trying to be this like, that's you're just, if you're competing on the margin because you've already got 40% either way, like, it's a very sound strategy to be that kind of person. Whereas where is his record that I could, and maybe there's this whole Amash wig out that I'm not aware of like these people who were really pulled into libertarianism or convinced of it, sort of through him. I mean, I'm sure there is a decent amount of exposure that's come from him, but he just feels like, he can't go. He's unwilling to go all the way because he thinks it's like unpopular or whatever, or unpragmatic, even if he believes it. And I don't know. Yeah,
What do you
I guess
mean
maybe
by
I'm just,
all
you know,
the
he's
way?
just the opposite. He's just the opposite of me. I'm just like,
Yeah.
if I believe it, I just need to see it. I just need to say it. And almost like, you know, the more I see sort of my own team saying things that I think are I disagree with, like sort of, I almost feel more the need to speak up at times. So yeah, that's some psychological differences there.
Yeah.
But what do you think in regards to like how hasn't he gone all the way, and what is there a particular thing that you feel like
Well,
he
he's
doesn't
just
go
not a
far
private.
enough?
He's not a private property rights absolutist. He's like, well, markets are kind of good. I mean, markets are good. Trade is good. Like, he doesn't have any principled opposition to the welfare state, so far as I can tell. He's not.
Oh,
He's not
really?
willing to affirm that taxation is theft. He's not a. He's not. He has no. I don't think he has many even deontological impulses to libertarian. And I love David Friedman. I have no problem with consequentialist libertarians, but it's just like, it's, you know, hey, libertarian stuff, you know, mostly would work better. You know, it's not that it's right or wrong, but you know, and so, you know, things should just kind of move in this direction.
Yeah, he's kind of the Reason magazine of candidates. Like it's, I don't. He may have these convictions, but he's not willing to. That's just not his style, which is kind of, yeah. I don't know. Now I mentioned Reason magazine, and all of a sudden I'm depressed at thinking about Reason magazine.
No,
Hey,
I
hey,
like Reason. I went
cut
to
my
their
teeth on
event.
this
I
stuff, I
like
will
them.
say. So, yeah.
I,
I was not. I didn't go right to. I mean, I read Rand, but I read a bunch of Milton Friedman before I got all the way to ANCAP. Like, it was just like, oh, that was actually part of it in terms of things that set me down. Some of my conclusions today is like, I had, if anything, more progressive impulses, and I would go and talk to people, and like be like, well, these would be like better ways of accomplishing your ideas, right? Like, isn't that interesting, you know?
Yeah.
And there's just, there's zero interest, like a zero resonance, and it was part of me, even that, like going, you know, kind of realizing that, hey, maybe these people don't actually care about these things that they say that they care about. Maybe they are saying that they care about them for different reasons.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I read Reason magazine. I subscribed to it way back in the day in the '90s and stuff when I was very young. But I think that kind of going back to Justin Amash seems like the type to me who, and going back even further to our discussions of like democracy and stuff like that, and I think you mentioned something like it's democracy kind of produces this fake elite, right? Like, not the people who in another order would naturally rise to the top. And I used to be a newspaper reporter, and so like I've covered tons of city council and school board meetings and stuff like that. And I've figured out, like, these are the people, we are ruled over by people who think it's fun or productive or good to like spend 3 hours a night at a school board meeting, right? Like, the people who will show up and do that are the type of people who want to tell other people what to do and all that. And that's what democracy is. That's who rises to the top. That's your Elizabeth Warren and your Joe Biden and your Ron DeSantis, the people who are willing to go to these, who are willing to play that game, which for someone with a personality and an interest in life and, you know, interesting friends and hobbies, that is not those people. So we're ruled by the most dull, unimaginative people there are. That's what democracy gets us.
Yeah, I had a phrase. Maybe someone here can improve it, because this one, I will admit, this one never took off at all. But you know, that it's a neurocracy, ruled by the most neurotic. Because the more you are like, you know, this kind of worried person who feels this need to get involved with everything, the
Fuck,
more
that's
you are
me.
the
Oh no. Are you saying I have like a future in politics? You're neurotic
well,
enough.
how did you end up on the podcast, right? So,
Well, there's different types of neuroses, I guess. Well, or maybe how you seek to treat those. We libertarians do it by being contrarians, and the others are, you know, again, they go to it, and I think they actually enjoy it to a certain extent. Like, I would watch these people; they would get really into debating these things about just whatever. I still remember debates over like signs, right? That people would come to city council to try to get a variance to make their sign a little bigger, or to use like more than 2 colors on their sign or something like this. And the people on the city council were actually like debating like these things on the merits, and like, but what if you did, you know, it's like the fact that we're even having this discussion is a sign that you're you're crazy. But again,
or that doesn't sound like being neurotic to me. That just sounds like someone that's like mad with power. Like they're just mad with power, and so like because they have the ability to control that, they're like they want to feel like they're making the choice, they're making the decision.
I think
I had a boss like this.
Democracy is just the word for what we all do together, right? Like to me, that's their thing. It's like, well, we're all in this together, and we're all allowed to have opinions about everyone else's life, and those opinions should have laws to back them up. And so, yeah, that's why I'm always black-pilled, but like I'm black-pilled, but I enjoy being black-pilled. Like I'm going to go down fighting and trying to make it as difficult on them as possible. And I hope I'm wrong, but there's so many people like that out there, and people who just that's just the way it is. They accept it. That city council and the governor and all this, they have a right to tell us what to do, and most people just they don't challenge that. They don't really question that. Sorry.
Yeah.
I really brought things.
Hey, Aaron, you want to come up and visit? You want to come up for a visit to New Hampshire sometime?
I mean, I'm way more optimistic than you guys, I think.
I don't want to come. I mean, I'm not trying to. I know you guys. The LP Music Caucus has its own vision. I'm not trying to bust your guys' vision up. Of course, we're trying to do something obviously differently, but anything that's spreading, as I'm saying, anything that's spreading libertarianism is big. The LP still has a big role to play. Presidential race in 2024. I mean, I know the Music Caucus strategy is local, obviously, but which is also smart. But I'm a believer it's local and president is yep. So I think you guys are. So there's lots of opportunities coming up.
So what? Let's maybe talk a little bit about that before we go. Given the dynamics of this race, like I'm sorry to be pessimistic again, but just
fuck Aaron.
That's what I'm here for. But like just the dynamics of this race, of just how hyper partisan it is, and given 2016 and 2020, that I think that any sort of I'm wondering if is there going to be like somebody like Tulsi or RFK run as a challenger party, non-affiliated ticket. Like I just see, like, I think the reason I got like 10 thoughts in my head all at once. I think it's going to be tough for libertarians this year to get any votes at the national level, even if we have a great candidate, because everybody's just going to be in, I hate the other guy so much. So I think that no matter, and even with that, vote totals to me don't matter near as much as getting the message out. So like what we talked about earlier, activating the people who are predisposed to listen to us and who may already believe in us. That's why we have to have somebody out. That's why we have to have the Harry Brown or the Ron Paul out there, because that's all you're going to get from this thing. Whether you get 1%, 3%, or more likely, I think we'll be lucky to get 0.5% this year in 2024. But tell me I'm wrong. Tell me what you would like to see happen.
Well, all right. Just to be, I guess, optimistic about it, you've got, if it is the Trump Biden, which I think is, I tend to like the betting markets for the view of things at any given time. In fact, I'll check them right now because the betting markets think it's quite likely. They got Trump at 63, Biden at 68.
But wasn't Trump really low early on in that election?
At any given time, the price of a stock is most likely the correct price of a stock.
Oh.
Sometimes the price of stocks are wrong. Let me tell you. So that's the most likely scenario of any possible pair, and that is an opportunity, I think, if for someone sort of with real wit and energy and intelligence and competence, to come in and make some noise. I always like that person the most, though. That's why I like Vivek in the Republican Party more than anyone else, because to me he's that guy. He's bringing the most energy. He's bringing the most ideas. He's like, if someone to me, like he walked around Porcfest, and will talk to anyone. He would talk to his most. RFK took 4 staged pre-written questions. Well, I don't know. Sorry, I'm not claiming RFK had approval of the questions. Let me be very clear. I'm not claiming that, but like I know that they were picked by us. Vivek would walk around, talk to literally anyone. He took questions until people were done. People were like, all right, I'm tired of asking questions to this guy. So that someone who did that kind of thing, who will wade into, and he'll be like, yeah, I do think you guys are wrong about this or that, and I, for someone who can do that kind of thing is because hey, look, you like the kind of person who you feel is like kind of the most similar to you. Big surprise. But on the libertarian side, like someone who can be that kind of person, I think as long as you can get them to not ignore you. I mean, that is the thing. And you guys might think that I'm good at not getting ignored. The truth is they ignored me here in New Hampshire. They did. Like I got more national, like the national press wouldn't talk about it, wouldn't mention my ad. When the sponsored candidate, when the major party candidates put out their commercials, it's literally a news article that their commercial came out. Mine would get more views. It doesn't matter. And so how you sort of solve these things, but if you can get the attention, or if you can force the attention on you, and then demonstrate that these guys suck, because it's not about the ideas. But if you can make it for average people that like, hey, these guys are geriatric and decrepit morons. Yeah. Like maybe someone could beat them.
So when are you announcing your exploratory committee?
Never. I've told everyone who asks me, I say, if I run, every person I meet outside of New Hampshire, if they're an actual libertarian, I'll just be like, I don't even care if you vote for me, just leave. So I don't think you guys want me running, because I would just go around saying things like that. Because I'm very bad at being honest.
I wasn't saying that. I'm not trying to get you to run.
I know. I'm just letting you know. So that while people ask me here, sometimes people come up to me at Porcfest and asking, because I don't know where everyone is at in their considerations. I mean, I'm still backing Dave. Dave's my preferred choice. I think Spike's a very good messenger.
That's what I was saying. Amash and Spike was because I heard Dave was a no-go, so I was like, Spike and Amash, good little pair. They could balance each other out.
I really like Spike as I think his like sort of calm style and his comms approach, particularly on social media, I think it's actually very good to sort of bridge libertarianism to normiedom. I think that kind of thing. I would have some complaints, but I think he is better than.
Is there anyone that you don't have
too hard when he's not here? Of course. How could you not have complaints?
No, I was gonna say, is there anyone you don't have complaints for? Anyone?
Yeah. My wife.
Oh, aw.
That is the best. And I'm exactly the same way. I have complaints about everybody except one person. And
damn.
I truly, that's.
I think if I got married, they'd still complain about me.
Well, she's gonna say that's so not true.
You just gotta. There's one person out there who hopefully will see it that way, and I found my person.
Actually, let me be clear about something. Because when I say I have a couple of problems, like we don't need to have 100% disagreement to work together. And something I'm also pretty big on is like being a team player. That we're part of the team, and so I don't. I think New Hampshire will have its own concerns and and whatever, but we're not looking to get our way. I'm not looking to get our way 100% of the time. New Hampshire's not trying to get their way 100% of the time. We want there to be we want to be part of a team.
So what? Just maybe what's the Free State Project? We hear a lot about the stuff that makes it to the top of the Twitter libertarian feed, but like, how are things going? Like I've been hearing about this since a long time, and like if I weren't married and if I in a slightly different universe, I would probably be in the Free State Project, but I'm in East Tennessee now, which is just fine for me. It's as close as I'm going to get, and there's no snow. So, but like, is it growing? Are people actually starting to move there? Like, what are the numbers? Like, what's the state of how the project is going? Actually, a day to day, not just what we might think on Twitter.
Look, it's blown up. I mean, I think we've had more than 1,000 people move every year, several years running. And there's way more people who come, and don't join our mailing list or whatever, or formally indicate they're kind of a part of the group. There's people who come just because we're changing the branding of the state. Okay, of the state of New Hampshire. Sorry, not
Right.
the state. And because this is what a big thing for me is like if I can meme New Hampshire into the libertarian state, such that is part of popular conception, right? Like then I get all of the selection effects, sort of psychologically among how people relocate themselves, more and more naturally. And so that's really a big part of what I'm trying to do with a lot of my like comms and marketing and communication work. And even with some of the New Hampshire stuff, I mean, we're trying to take principled positions always. And we are trying to also move the needle on national issues that we think are important. Defend. Well, I guess defend the guard is a per state issue, but there's policy areas where LPNH is trying to make accomplishments both in state, like defend the guard, as well as nationally. With I think like the Ukraine beat and and sort of some of the sort of civil rights policy beat and these beats that where we're pushing these topics nationally. Certainly more than any other state affiliate, and even more than a lot of people. I mean, these are we're creating news stories over our takes and stuff like this. So that's sort of I think where the state affiliate is at. We definitely want to hit record. We definitely want to hit record membership here among free staters. And I think the bottom line for anyone who hasn't been to New Hampshire yet or hasn't been to Porcfest yet, like, don't think of yourself psychologically as, I'm visiting this because I might move here or whatever. Like, cause that's just a way of like talking yourself out of it. Like, just come and visit, just come and check it out. Right. Like if you've never been here, it's worth visiting. I mean, we have, LPNH events, that are, the size of most state conventions, on the regular. I mean, I have a bar meetup that's like the size of some state conventions on the regular. I mean, it's just like, it's not Porcfest every day, but there's a sort of density here that really creates possibilities, both in terms of work and lifestyle and all of these things that I think is unparalleled. And especially anyone who wants to raise kids. If you're raising a family or you're thinking about raising a family, that for me, way more than the tax policies or gun rights or whatever, all of which I'm sure are better, is like that the sense of what's possible on that side.
Yeah. So do they still have the thing where people sign the pledge and then so many people, once the pledge is signed, then everybody is pledged to move there? Is that still going?
No,
that's still the model.
We are past the phase of the pledge. Anyone can move at any time and sort of you become a free stater. You can be a free stater and live here. Free staters don't have to move. We're not trying to have there be some division. Here's what a free stater is now. Okay. A free stater is a small L libertarian that lives in New Hampshire. We can argue over what a small L libertarian is. I'm not here to convince you of my definition. We hopefully can tell if you live in New Hampshire. So that's what it is.
I will say you guys are like worse than Jehovah's Witnesses. Everyone would like came up to me and they're like, "When are you moving to New Hampshire?
Thank you.
Moving to New Hampshire?
Thank you.
Moving?"
Yeah, I can't imagine why strange libertarians would want to come up and talk to you. The only reasons that I can think of.
It's because of my shining personality and amazing ideas, Jeremy.
So for an attractive young lady who's at a libertarian thing, like how bad was, like,
it was great.
As bad as people say, like, it's not that bad, right?
I mean, to be fair, I loved it because it's like small fish in a big pond. No, big fish in a small pond,
Yeah.
Well, there's also a lot of families at Porcfest, right? Like a lot of, it's, sure. I mean, the Free State movement probably is, I don't know the age, actually I shouldn't say that. I don't know how the ages of the FSP people compare to the average age of LP people. Yeah. Mises Caucus seems to have definitely brought in a lot of people like in their 20s, right? It's kind of my 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, we skew pretty young. Like I'm like one of the oldest by far. But yeah, it's 20s and 30s. Yeah, a lot, which is kind of cool. I mean, I think it's, I mean, I hope you guys continue to do well up there. Like, do you have an idea of like how many people of the definition that you're saying, small L libertarian who lives in New Hampshire, how many are we talking? Do we have
I mean, the exact quantity is hard. And also, if we're doing our job right, and this is also something that's updated my thinking, is like, there are some people that are worth hundreds of other people.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like there's some people who can come here and it's like, they can convince their whole town to vote for them. You know, they can come, or they can go and you know, press legislators and just get legislation passed. I mean, there's some people, and I'm sure we see it in the LP as well, that are, you know, just these guys are the power people. These guys are the guys that get it done. You know, and so you know, I'm shifting more, like the more of those people. Obviously, I want everyone, any single person that's a small libertarian. But like, you know, we have 40 of the state legislators. That takes people who want to go and run as a state legislator. You know. We have the House Majority Leader who's a free stater. That takes someone who has to have the will to do those kinds of things, right? And that tends to be not the kind of person who wants to be like an agorist in the woods or whatever, which I, of course, totally support. But like, I want to win. Like, I don't want to do this like as an at the edges kind of thing. You know, like I'm not that kind of person. Like I want the whole thing. You know, so. And I'm not saying I'm going to get it, but you know, that's the fun. And to me, I enjoy the challenge and the sort of chase of it all as well. So it's a very ambitious goal. Not saying we'll ever achieve it, but I kind of feel like we're like making moves, and feels maybe less impossible than it did when I moved here. So
no, that's kind of my thing with, you know, I was kind of dropping out of the Liberty movement for a year or so before I got back in with the Mises Caucus, and I was kind of like, yeah, again, going back to my attitude earlier, like, yeah, this is probably all not going anywhere, but it's going to be fun while we do it, and the fact that we might move the needle just a little bit is enough that gives it enough meaning for me to want to keep doing it, and I really do think that like it is better that there are differing approaches, because you know, I think that the Free State Project is amazing and should continue, and I hope it does well. And I even hope that, you know, other things like it might crop up, just because for different reasons, you're not going to, you know, New Hampshire's not going to work for different people. But I think that by doing what we're doing, I think the Mises Caucus, our vision of wanting to do things locally, that we might get some of the pockets, some pockets of this or that going in certain places. And one thing that I really want to, I think that is an avenue I haven't heard a lot of other people talk about, that I've been talking about some, is like trying to turn the people we were talking about earlier who are, who, you know, the local and state politicians who like doing this stuff, is like try to sort of weaponize their lust for power against each other. Like I want Gavin Newsom thinking, oh, I can be the president of like the 6th most important country in the world, right? If we secede, right? So like, I want the decentralization and the fragmentation to happen in as many different ways as possible. And one of those ways is, I think, it is doing that. Like to tell the people in California, like, oh, you can have everything you want, as far as you can trans all your kids, you can do whatever, you can have the income tax rate at 105%, you know, you can throw people in jail for, you know, even saying that they like guns, just leave, right? to try to get to break up the United States and see what happens after that. So I don't know if that's crazy or not, but I think that there's some possibilities there.
I don't know what appetite there is for that, but I would love a return to federalism. Honestly, I would love that to be rather than fighting over a national. I never even thought of this before, actually, but rather than fighting over this national platform, we're fighting about, you know, we really should just say that abortion is a states' rights. I know people hate the states' rights. States will have rights. Yeah, it's just a phrase that explains that this should be decided at a state level. Right. That's what that phrase means. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Well, that's the thing is by promoting the national divorce concept that the compromise might be federalism, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, hey, no, I support pushing national divorces around. Hey, if we can't get divorced, then we've got to have more federalism. Absolutely, like America with strong federalism, and ideally then sub-federal stuff, so whatever that word would be, subdivision.
I'm in Massachusetts, guys. I'm in Boston. Fuck.
You're in Boston? Why are you there? I didn't even know that. Why?
Because, well, honestly, I'm a city girl. I like Boston. And for me, I genuinely believe that we can make change via
Yeah, we'll just
culture
talk
and
to
art.
you. Yep. Sometimes you've got to let a young puppy run around and learn, and we'll be here. And when you start to tire a little bit, we'll talk some more. Hey, no, not to be to be less condescending. I'm sorry. We could you could come on up to events, and we have stuff at the Shell, the Seacoast. I mean, this is the thing: is there's events constantly. Anyone can go to fsp.org/calendar and see that it's a calendar full of stuff, and then there's all that off-calendar stuff that you've got to, ask people about, or it's not like everything that's happening, of course, goes on the calendar, but all kinds of stuff that's just going on. And I think of it again. Don't think of it as, we're like when you're talking about New Hampshire, I see people get New Hampshire curious, and it's like they go into all this research mode, and it's like, dude, if you were thinking about like eating a sandwich, would you spend all this time like researching it, or
Yes.
would you just like bite it at some point? Like, you don't have to move here to come and check out the state and see what we're doing. And that's like anyone if someone's getting a little New Hampshire curious, just come and see what you think of it. And you can come out any time of year, Porcfest or not.
So if somebody would want to come up and check it out and have some sort of local connection guide, whatever, what's the best? Dennis Pratt.
So fsp.org/visit is a form where you can fill out where a woman named Chris Lopez will contact you. But otherwise, like, it's also just kind of the Free Stater, ethos. Because the thing is, everyone was helped by other people when they moved here. You call us Jehovah's Witnesses. I sometimes like to joke and call us Libertarian Mormons.
Yeah, I almost said Mormons.
There's the same kind of thing. I'm like, because I got here, I'm like, why are all these people being so nice to me? So, that's, and now, I want to do the same thing for other people. And I think that's just, that's the attitude that a lot of Free Staters have. So it's not like an imposition. Think of it as like starting some social relationships. And so maybe it's someone that you just hit it off with some mutual on Twitter, or some friend on Facebook that's here, just someone you met one time at an LP convention or whatever. Like, it's if you message that person and just like talk to them about New Hampshire a little bit, or ask them questions, or whatever. Because asking that person that that's and I'm happy to be that person. Anyone's listening to the podcast, I will answer your messages about New Hampshire, and love talking to anyone about it.
Yep. All right. Yeah. So anything else short term you want people to know about? We probably better wrap it up somewhat soon. But any other curiosities about Porcfest this year?
Well, grab a ticket. You want to talk about that, or is that
no? Anything, okay. Just any loose ends.
I don't feel a strong need to get to. There's a controversy. At the end of Soapbox Idol. I don't feel a strong need to rehash it right now, although I have no problem. Like, it doesn't. I don't think anyone here even knows what it's talking about, but it did spill over to Twitter some, and it's basically there's just some jerk who would not get off the stage and started acting threatening towards the judges. And Soapbox Idol is this event where it's supposed to be like Soapbox Idol, like I'm like kind of like Simon Cowell, like we're being harsh judges at times of people, and this guy was just not in the mental state to be there. And he then refused to get off the stage. I think hopefully the video will be posted. I would mostly stand by that behavior is on my side was appropriate, and that his was not. But I do regret anyone that if I wasted someone's time with what I did, or caused people to be scared or to be uncomfortable. That's definitely not something that I want to do.
So is the all the video of Porcfest? Is there a Porcfest YouTube page? Or...
Yeah, follow. It's just Free State. It'll be a channel. It'll be a playlist on the Free State YouTube. But just follow Free State. Dang it! What's the exact search? Free State Project on YouTube. It'll come up. Yeah, just type that in, and you'll find our channel. And the videos. It tends to take. We tend to kind of like drip them out rather than put them all up at once. And so the video will come out every day or so, or maybe several a week for months. I don't know at what order that one will be posted. But whenever that footage comes out at any time, I'm fine with it, because I would certainly like some of these controversies to be put to bed. I mean, there's like some of these people who decided to go all in against the COVID vaccine are this very, very dumb schizophrenic crowd of people is they tend to have one of these two attributes. They're either very dumb or they're schizophrenic. And then you get the class of psychopaths and manipulative people like this that corral them or channel that energy. They're hungry for intellectuals because they're mostly too dumb to have people that will engage with them. And so in the same way, if someone treats their conspiratorial delusions and gives them a little bit of intellectual credibility, and those people, they just latch on to that person, and that person becomes a hero to them. I think it's pretty disgusting, though, when people do that kind of thing.
It seems like obviously vaccines are a very emotionally charged topic, and it's weird how, because I obviously was against the mandates. I'm not particularly anti-vax, I think some vaxes, they make sense. So it's just weird to see how it was like there was a lot of like rabidly anti-vax people. And I think that there's just a lot of emotion coming from that, because it always comes back to the kids, right?
And that's one thing that is there, and this is for another topic, and maybe is there a good person that we could have on maybe sometime, because I think that most libertarians, and I know I think share what Brandi was saying, is like whether it's medication in general or vaccines in particular, like I'm not of the thing that says, you should take no medicine and no vaccines. And the position of the mainstream media is anything your doctor tells you to take at any time, you should just not only that, but you should take it, but you should be asking your doctor about things you saw on TV. Should I be taking those, right? Like, I think is there a good voice or two that can be like, hey, this is sensible and this is not, like, because in the libertarian world, at least, it's like we hear a lot of people who are just 100% skeptical about everything and don't want to let I think you guys know what I'm trying to say. Like, is there good reasonable voices on this issue?
Well, I would. I mean, I'm quite sympathetic to the view that a lot of medicine is fake. That most medical interventions are surprisingly not beneficial and not tested. Right? Like I have no problems. Look, I'm a back surgery skeptic, right? Like, there's plenty of things. It's unclear that this stuff is real. And also this is also why they hated the double-blind studies of health insurance, because if you look at like the two times that government health insurance has actually been studied via a peer-reviewed study, which is the Oregon Health Experiment and the Rand Healthcare Experiment. These are basically the only two that were run at scale in America, and both of them said that giving people health insurance is basically irrelevant for health outcomes, right. Or had very, very minor effects on health outcomes. Most of healthcare is about signaling care for one another rather than things that actually make us better. We are very we like practicing situations that let us practice sort of what would the tribe, because again, egalitarian tribes is the thing to come back to for all human behavior. The sort of post-agriculture order that allowed the state to rise is too psychologically new for it to be driving, a lot of human behavior. So in the egalitarian order, because you were always concerned about your social standing within the tribe, would the tribe leave me behind if I was actually sick, is very important to see affirming care given to you, even if you were a little bit ill, because it becomes a mutually. This is why, hey, I want to bring over my friend some soup. This kind. It's in us for these reasons, and so it plays out now in a different way. But I think this is the manifestation of a lot of this stuff.
But like for
I got
somebody
off
who-
topic, but in terms of who to find, like, look, I guess I don't have specific names on the top of my head.
That's something we should look that up, Brandi, to find somebody like specifically on like vaccines. Like if somebody like had a kid today, like what would you?
Yeah,
Like-
look, what should I would love to see people host. This should be this vaccine stuff. I just think it's way better. Unless you're going to do like a screen share between two people who are like somewhat agreeable, who are really going to dive through this stuff. Like having these verbal discussions about scientific facts, I think is just a flawed way to do it. And if you're someone who can only get your advice from Joe Rogan, maybe you're just not someone who's smart enough to make your own health claims.
Well,
And I
that's-
think people should consider that.
Yeah, Brandi and I were talking about that right before you came on. Is like, do we want to talk about the RFK wanting to debate that one weird looking guy with the bow tie or whatever? Like what? Like I sort of enjoyed a little bit of that on Twitter just to see all the hysterical takes of everybody. But you're right, Jeremy. It's like, who's going to be convinced by that debate?
Yeah, look, I think he should have gone on, or someone should have picked up the mantle. You know, there's someone out there who both has enough encyclopedic knowledge of all the insane stuff that RFK is going to throw at him in a verbal debate, and can actually summarily, pull it to the top of their head in real time. It just might not be that guy. And I'm not trying to go to bat for him. I haven't dug through all of his issues. I've seen a couple of things that make me think he's not the kind of guy who I would like either. But like this idea that, this idea that you could throw him against RFK. RFK is a professional verbal persuader and get to the bottom of it. Yeah. Or who did he want him to go? Was it against RFK? Who was he supposed to go on against?
No, it was RFK, right?
It was RFK, right? Yeah. So like, I just think. How about I wish Peter had handled this smarter. Peter should have said, "Hey, RFK, I challenge you to a written debate where we each reply with one Substack post per day for 2 weeks."
Yeah,
like that would be a great format for and I would love to see that, and I would read that.
Yeah.
But that I'd rather see things in that direction.
But I think it is, even as to kind of put a bow on all this, is like we talked about. Can we persuade people and stuff like that? But I think it is kind of, I think when we get to the place where one side is basically saying, oh, I'm not going to dignify that position by even talking about it.
I think they don't want to platform RFK too. I think that might be part of it. It's just
exactly
they don't want
what
his
they're
name
saying.
out there.
But so even if we can't actually persuade people on things, or at least anywhere close to how we wish it would be, like I think it's a healthy society to at least go through the motions and like.
That's a good point. I think that's a good point, Aaron. Yeah.
But to say, hey, well, I'm not even going to talk to you because like to that's the phrase they use. I don't want to give this guy a platform.
Yeah, look, and that's how we get treated. And let me be clear. I was not trying to say either Peter or someone should have gone on Joe Rogan. Completely, 100% agreed. Yeah. I'm just saying specifically for the people out there who are trying to find truth, maybe scientific truths. I think podcasts are great for interesting stories. I think they can be great for moral debate. I think they can be great for people making points. But this idea of like, this is just such a complex question. And these people, and this is part of what pisses me off about it, is like, I can tell when people are just displaying, and I'm not even saying that they, because they're giving me a bad argument, therefore their overall position is wrong. I'm sure you've seen plenty of people be defending things that you believe with bad arguments, and that bothers you because then it's bad stuff. A lot of the stuff that people, and so when I see all this stuff people sharing, I say, well, like, there's a lot of people who are really rabid about this stuff who clearly aren't solid thinkers themselves. And that does not mean that their positions are wrong, but like, we need to have the more solid people, going through this stuff.
It's there's so much. I could talk to Jeremy for like 3 hours.
Well, we should. We'll talk. Come up to Porcfest.
Okay.
We'll crack a few beers.
He's doing his Mormon
shitty jokes.
pitch.
I will do my best. I'll go in and talk to my wife like now and start laying the groundwork now to see if we can manage. I can manage to do it next year. But that would be neat. And plus, hopefully, we'll see everybody. So what you guys talked about with Porcfest, like on a smaller scale and kind of different, but like the Reno thing was great too. It's like that sense of it, again. very different, but in some ways hey, we're all working together toward this goal and we achieved that goal. Like Reno was just such a great, for somebody who's black pilled. Like I went into Reno thinking, yeah, I said, we're either going to lose outright or we're going to win, and they're going to legal maneuvering or something and kind of, steal this thing from us. And so to actually to do what we did and have 70% and to run the table like that was, that was great. So hopefully, if what you guys are doing in New Hampshire is anything close to that feeling that I experienced there, then maybe I do need to come take a look. So
I will say it was very inspiring. Porcfest was extremely inspiring for someone like me that wants to spread liberty, and it was great actually being around all those like-minded people. It's definitely a must go. If you are a libertarian, little L, big L, do it. Go.
Well, maybe we'll have the show as big as we want it to be by next year, and we can just do some live episodes up there and all that. That'll be my excuse to make it up, right? So,
so Porcfest tickets are for sale
already?
Now. They're for sale right
Look at them. They're on it.
At porcfest.com.
So how many people were there, and is it trending up every year? And can you measure it by ticket sales, or do people climb over the wall, or I don't even know how it works?
They've got to fix that. I believe it was the largest. It certainly felt the largest. It was more built up than in past years too, in the sense there was just Dennis Pratt as the lead organizer, who did a really co-lead organizer with a woman named Constance. But I think Dennis and Constance would agree that Dennis deserves more credit for a vision because he's been working on it for several years. That of pulling Porcfest away from the only schedule being in this one area and this completely decentralized design where anyone can put anything on the schedule at any site. And this has encouraged people to be building up their sites, to be more sort of competitive with one another. We're seeing all this bottom-up organizing, and I think that's part of what's making the event increasingly special.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Jeremy, and I can't wait to see what. I know that you probably got something in the back of your head that you're another commercial.
Oh, we got new stuff coming out. I shot one with Dan Smots, but I've got some new stuff coming out in terms of my own work this second half of this year, and I'm feeling ready to hit the ground very hard after Porcfest. So I think it's gonna be a fun rest of this year.
Yeah, and we'll have you back on to talk about that thing we were talking about, and I always appreciate everything you do, and just keep up the good work, man.
Cheers.
All right, we'll see you, Brandi. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.